What's up, everybody? It's your friend Isaac from Big Bike BMX. We're back for season 2. Again, Craig, man, can you believe we made it to season 2?
The more and more I think about it, the more and more you keep reminding me about it. I'm like,
Right.
we did make it. I think we entered the season 2 zone, dude, and we're here.
Yeah, it's nuts, dude. Like just two dirtbags that ended up talking about looking at stickers in the bike shop, display cases, somehow made it with a bunch of friends through an entire. We were talking about it, dude. Like we've had more podcast and video interviews and episodes than BMX Plus had issues.
Yeah, I mean, isn't
that crazy?
It blew my mind, man. I mean, 47 or 48 episodes last year, and I'm like, at 12 issues per year, we've had over 4 years of content if we were a magazine. So
right.
Crazy.
If it was freestyle, we were already into the like Thrasher days when they were like skateboarding was on the cover.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So everybody, welcome season 2. This is going to be, I believe, episode 3 of season 2. We are so stoked that you're with us. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Jump in, be part of it, and just have a good time. We are not really good at interviews, but we're really good at conversations. So we're starting to call these conversations because interviews sound like it's a job or something, and we're just like, people are like, formal. You guys suck at interviews. I'm like, we do suck at interviews. Like we're really good at hanging out with our homies though. So,
exactly.
Like that's what we do. So Craig, why don't you tackle this one? Because I think there's some history here with this guest and our show as far as it goes with me and my favorite thing to say when we talk to anybody about flatland freestyle. Would you agree?
I totally would agree. So let's definitely kick this off. One of the things that I've been hearing from you, and if we turn the calendar back a little bit, like all the way back to the beginning, one of the things that you've been probably the most known for saying or doing besides burping on the show is your comment that whenever we bring up freestyle, whenever we bring up tricks in your past, there was one thing that you could always do better than somebody, and that was the boomerang. So everybody out there knows that Isaac, like one of his go-to freestyle tricks for AFA contests and just, around the neighborhood with his bros was the boomerang. And he would always say, but I can boomerang better than Scott Freeman, right?
Fact.
So lo and behold, I had to like really think about how we can really prove this or disprove this. And I don't know if we can or can't, but tonight, Isaac, what do we have going on that's going to at least shed some light on this?
I'm going to actually go back 3 weeks and I'm going to tell everybody what happened on my birthday.
Okay.
So you guys, my birthday was coming up. Craig's like, hey man, I've got something special for your birthday. You got to join the Zoom meeting on my birthday. And so he's like, dude, you got to be there at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I'm like, man, you want me to get up super early on my birthday? It's like I'm sleeping in. He's like, yep. And so that we couldn't do it that morning. That night, he goes, all right, man, I'm good. I need you to give me the Zoom login info. And then I need you to not look at the screen. And I'm thinking like he's going to get like a celebrity lookalike. I don't know what's going to happen, right? I'm thinking maybe Todd's going to jump on and like troll me or something. And then he goes, all right, man, look up. And I look up and tonight's guest is on there. And I was like, I flipped out, dude. Like I was 13 again, dude. I was so stoked. So like you guys, this is probably, this to me, I could be more geeked up right now because our guest, excuse me, trying not to burp. You guys, we do this right. We film this right after I ate dinner. And so I scarf down food and I always end up burping on the show. I apologize. Now this guest is probably one of my all-time favorite riders because they are my age. So when I was, when I would go through the magazines and I would look up results, first thing I would look at 1415 expert. When I got sponsored way back in the day by MCS, I was like, I want to, like, this was the rider that I could relate to because they were my age, my size. And if they could do it, then I could do it. So you guys, it's my honor to hand this over to Craig. Craig, you introduce our guest for this one.
Sure, no problem. Ladies and gentlemen, sound like we're starting a race. Ladies and gentlemen, a Big Bike BMX, let's give a huge welcome and a big, giant Big Bike BMX welcome to our guest tonight, Mr. Scott Freeman.
What's up, guys?
Yo, what's up, Scott?
What a great intro. Thank you.
Heck yeah, man.
Is it hard to sit there and listen to us talk about you for like 5 minutes while you're like, get on with it, you guys, move forward?
Yeah, no, it's flattering. Thanks. I love it.
I wanted to beef up the
Guys are
intro
awesome.
a little bit more, you
I
know.
know you guys now, so you know we're acclimated.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to say, like, you know, 80s freestyle, Skyway sponsored legend. There's just so much I could add to it, you know.
Fans.
Everything.
Yeah.
AFA Masters, movies. I mean, Scott, what haven't you done? You know,
Dude, Scott, I have a question
It was
for you.
so
This
long
is-
ago, I don't remember. What was that, like 50 years ago? I can't remember.
believe me, I'm in the same boat. I think did you do like a, I don't know if they call it a stunt double, or did you play yourself in a Disney movie? Way back, like there was a bike, and remember those, or they were like the uni wheel covers that were those discs.
Ask Max is a Disney Sunday after school special called Ask Max.
And you were in that, right?
Yeah, so I played myself, and Hugo Gonzalez was the main stunt double for the main character, who was Chunk from Goonies.
Dude, I was telling Craig.
You know what? This is so disrespectful. I'm drawing a blank on the actor's name right now.
Chunk from the Goonies?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he's like a dean of like a.
He's a lawyer.
dean-
He's an entertainment lawyer now in Hollywood. But oh my gosh,
For what?
why am I drawing a blank on his name? Somebody Google that if you guys can do that. I can't remember his Jeff Cohen. Jeff Cohen.
I'm pretty sure, dude. He was like a dean of admissions for a while too, at like a major university.
Might have been, yeah, he might have been. He's done very well in his after, celebrity life.
Yeah.
Jeff Cohen, he was Chunk in Goonies. He's been in a bunch of stuff, of course.
Yeah.
And then he was Max on in the movie Ask Max. And so myself and Hugo, who doubled for him, did all of his stunts throughout the movie. We were the bullies on the campus during the movie that chased him down and gave him a hard time, during lunch, and then chased him down on the football field, and on the quad on campus in between classes and all that. So it was not a lot of acting, but a lot of BMX riding, just chasing down on campus, which was a ton of fun. A lot of people don't know this, but Pat Romano was the stunt coordinator on the movie with us. So Pat Romano was basically my boss and Hugo's boss during the filming, and super cool guy. And Pat wanted us, there was one scene in the movie where we had to jump off a wall that was on the campus. It was like a junior high school campus, right? So me and a couple of the other bike riders were chasing Jeff through the quad, and we jump off this wall, and the wall was about 6 or 7 feet high, straight to flat. And then as soon as we landed on flat, we had to do this fake crash. So when we landed on flat, there was all these stunt doubles that were supposed to be like custodians on the campus with trash cans and stuff. Like they were taking the trash out in the middle of the day. So they had all these metal trash cans, and we were to jump off the wall and land, and then do a fake crash into all these metal trash cans. Totally unrehearsed, completely unrehearsed. No protections, no pads, no nothing, right? We just had to jump, land, and then crash. And I had this is in '86. I had an AFA contest like in 3 weeks in, I don't know where, Portland, Oregon, maybe. And so I had to compete with Skyway, as a factory rider. I had to compete in 3 weeks at the AFA contest. And Pat Romano wanted us to do this big crash. And I'm like, hey man, I'm like, I can't risk getting hurt. Skyway's going to be really angry if I film this movie and get hurt, and then I can't compete and do my job as a factory rider for Skyway. So I remember, this is funny, I'll never forget this. Pat Romano got really angry, and he was like, look, man, you're going to do this stunt. Like, we're filming right now. You're going to do the stunt whether you like it or not. And I'm like, And then there was some controversy. My memory is fading, but there was a little bit of controversy on set. And then he came back to me and he's like, all right, fine. We'll give you an extra $800 if you jump off the wall and do the fake crash. And I was like, okay.
Done.
Done.
And that was my first exposure to how Hollywood works. It's like, and you could ask Eddie Fiola this. Eddie is a master at negotiating the risk of stunts for pay when you're in the Screen Actors Guild. Eddie Fiola is a master at that.
It sounds like the Mike Miranda was on the show, and he was telling us on the set of Rad that he went up to Hal Needham and was like, you know, hey man, I got a great idea. Why don't I, you know, when I'm going up the side of the berm or something, whatever he was doing, why don't I wreck and, you know, do this like really, you know, dramatic thing that would look good on camera? And Hal Needham basically, and I'm paraphrasing what Mike said, but he's like, you know, Hal Needham's like, yeah, that'd be cool. And he goes, yeah, but you know, for like $500, you know, or something. They negotiated right there on set Mike's crash. And then Isaac, wasn't there another crash scene where now it was like
3?
Yeah. It was like
Yeah.
every time he was like, all right, well, do a crash here. And the same thing is like you're saying, it's like on the set negotiations right there.
Yeah.
You know,
He was like,
and
hey,
money talks.
I'll fall off of the ramp for another $800. And they're like, done. And so then he felt like the gap when he had to jump over the gap. And they're like, the second time Mike Miranda falls, he's like, he negotiated that so he can get an extra like $600.
Yeah, it works. Like I said, I mean, I only did it one time. And I didn't know what I was doing. They just offered it to me. It wasn't a negotiation. They just gave it to me because I was like, hey, you know, I got a AFA contest I got to be at. I can't get hurt. And he was like, well, we'll just give you money. And then if you get hurt, then that makes up for it. And I was like, all right, whatever.
Makes sense.
Yeah, totally. But the other movie, there's another Disney movie where I just did stunts. I stunt doubled for Sean Astin in another Disney movie. And
was that Brat Patrol?
Brat Patrol, where we were on a military base and we just basically we crashed go-karts and we had a side hack. We jumped a side hack, and my friend Julie Lee, who was sort of my chaperone, good friend of mine in the neighborhood, who took me to a lot of like things when my parents were working. So she would take me to like movie auditions and commercial auditions and things. Julie was on the set with me for Brat Patrol, and in between takes, it might have been during lunch, she's a motocross rider, a really good motocross rider. And so she and I took off on this side hack that was in the movie, and it was all decked out and had all this like custom stuff on it, like a custom, like a, I don't even know what you call it, like a shield, like a Viking
like
shield.
a fairing.
Yeah, like a fairing, like a Viking fairing for the movie. And it was all decked out and painted really nice. And Julie and I took off on this side hack, just screwing around in between takes. And we ended up crashing it and broke the fairing. Cracked the fairing. And we had to film in like an hour, right? And we had just busted up the prop. And they didn't have a second one. We totally thrashed this thing. And so we ended up coming back. We got in so much trouble. I remember that. They were pretty upset. And we ended up like, you know, putting duct tape on the back of it, and they were able to film the scene. But you know, that's what it was like back in the 80s when we were doing that stuff, because, you know, really for the most part, none of us were aspiring actors or really professional Hollywood people. We were just misfit BMX riders. So when the camera wasn't on, we were screwing around constantly, right? Wrecking things, getting in trouble, and just, I guess, basically being kids, being typical teenagers, which is, you know, what it's all about. So that was so much fun. I had so much fun during that time.
And that's a great segue, because, all right, so I think like if you follow the show, you're probably an old school like freestyler, BMXer. I think we all followed you. We remember the first AFA where and you may have to correct my history here, but I'm going to go quickly into what I'm getting at is you grew up in BMX. Like you learned how to be a person around BMX, which is, I think that's such a common thread. Like I learned street smarts and how to act around people and how to treat people decently, because I wasn't around, like, it's not like today, you know, where like you have like, I think the most wholesome thing I had in my life was like Mr. Rogers as a kid. I was a latchkey kid, right? So you learn quick, like, okay, if you do something shady to somebody, you're going to get beat up. You know what I mean? So hanging out with skaters and BMXers, and it was just like, if you did something cool, you rode ramps, it's almost like you operated at a different level and you got a different level of respect in your city amongst the peers and things like that. It was like you were special. At least that's the way it felt for me. Craig, did it feel like that up in your area in NorCal?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, and you it's almost like you can't hold a candle to the kids of today and what they have, because they have social media and they have internet and they have exposure online. But like you said, back when we were kids, and Scott, you're probably right there in the fold too. Everything was on the street. It was how you interacted. It was seeing the same dudes all the time and riding. And, it's kind of like you had your own little circle that you float in. And,
Yeah.
there were a lot of life lessons besides being on the bike. The bike was just a common thread. It was just
Yeah.
what brought kids out of the house into the street. And then that's where it started. And then
Yeah.
it went from there.
I remember Scott. Okay. So I remember Scott did like you did a contest. I remember there was a write up, like you got to keep an eye on this kid, Scott Freeman. And I think you were I think you had just got picked up you got picked up right after your first contest. Is that right? I remember the first time I saw you were on a TA. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think it was spring of '84, right after the first Huntington Beach AFA contest. Because I think there were a few Huntington Beach contests back in the '80s. This is the first one.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is back when this is even before anybody knew who Josh White was. I mean, my gosh, like I think back and man, when you really think about, and it's, it's a hard thing to say because it seems silly these days, but if you want to place a label of your place in the sport from a legacy standpoint, I'm like, wow, like there was Bob Haro and Bob Morales, and then even before that, Jeff Watson and those guys. But then there was Bob Haro, Bob Morales, and then Arl Osborne, Mike Buff, and then this group of other riders, which I basically would say me, Eddie Fiola, Martin Aparicio, even before Ron Wilkerson was even known, right? Brian Skura, a few others, Robert Peterson and Maurice Meyer, like early generation. I'm talking like 1983, 1984. Like there was because Bob Haro and Bob Morales were like 82, 81, 82, RL as well, 81, 82, RL was part of that. Mike Buff, I suppose, it was in that early realm as well. But there was only a handful of guys during that 81 to 83 realm. And then all of a sudden there was an influx of riders that were factory sponsored, but there wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot, right? There was only a handful. And I'm like, and I was 12. I was just a little kid. I'm like, how I made it into that tiny little segment of time as a factory sponsored freestyler, but first on board, it's a cliche. I think somebody made a video about that, like the very first generation of freestyle riders, but the youngest of the bunch, because everybody else was like 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years older than me.
Yeah, dude, what was that like? I mean, most of those guys were peers as far as they were relatively close in age, like RL, Eddie, Mike Buff, and so you being 12 years old and walking into a circle of where most of those dudes are like, I don't know, 16 to 19 years old, maybe 15 to 19, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
I mean, were you able to walk into that and be like peers, or was it more like, hey, here's the young kid coming in, and was there any I don't know, you had to prove yourself, or you weren't, I don't know what to say about that. I'm just trying to see what your thought was on entering that circle like you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I say this to this day, right? At 48 years old, and other people have said it too. Anyone's success in life is basically, if you define, depending on how you define success, and it's very subjective, and I get that, but success is the intersection of hard work and luck, right? I'm sure you guys have probably heard that somewhere. Somebody said that. It's not my quote, but I'm like, I love that. Success is the intersection of hard work and luck. And I'll tell you, when I first got involved in the sport, I lucked out because, and I probably said this in some interviews back in the day, like my history, a lot of people know if they follow me from back in the day, like I just by happenstance lived directly across the street from Gail Webb. So I'm a neighborhood kid in Orange County, California, no interest in BMX whatsoever. I mean, zero, none whatsoever. And all of a sudden, Gail Webb, America's sports mom, moves in across the street from me, and in her side yard sets up this massive U-shaped half pipe, like the Vans, the old school Vans half pipe, no flat bottom, right? Just a big U ramp. But her ramp was bigger than the Vans ramp. It was like 12 feet high or 13 feet high. And I was just a kid across the street, and I would see these guys coming over and skateboarding and riding this ramp in her yard. Well, I didn't know that the people that were riding her ramp happened to be Eddie Fiola and Mike Dominguez, other pro skateboarders, right? And this is probably I think she moved into the neighborhood in 1980, 82 or 83. So there was a window of time where I was just across the street in awe, and I was watching and I know I'll never forget Eddie Fiola riding the ramp practicing, because he was doing shows with Gail back then, and I was just a kid. I'm like, that's cool, I want to do that. And then I became friends with her son because we were the same age, so we were buddies. We went to the same school. It was, dude, what was this, fourth or fifth grade elementary school, right? So her son Mike and I were good friends, and we hung out. And he was kind of into BMX a little bit, but he was a motocross rider and a skateboard rider. He did everything. And that's what Gail Webb was all about. She wasn't about BMX only. She was about skateboarding, motocross, BMX. And so I was like into all of it. And I got into all of it in the beginning. I was a skateboarder. I got a Kawasaki KX80 dirt bike. I became a dirt bike rider. I became a BMX rider. I wasn't sure if I was a flatlander or a vert rider. I didn't know back then. I was 82, 83. I was 11 years old.
You just freestyled. Yeah, I was a freestyler.
Yeah, just freestyle. And yeah, so, but for whatever reason, Eddie Fiola, and I got to give him credit, and I always will, he would come over and ride Gail's ramp, and then he would just hang out with me and teach me tricks, because he knew that I wanted to learn these tricks. So he's like, all right, I'm going to teach you how to do this trick and then this trick, basic stuff, right? Just basic, handling the bike and that sort of thing, how to jump, that sort of thing. And to be honest with you, Eddie Fiola taught me a lot of my early tricks, my flatland tricks, just the basic stuff. And it was enough to get me stoked, to get me excited about flatland. And then I was like, okay, I wasn't a very good vert rider, I don't think. I mean, I loved it, but I didn't ride a lot of vert. So I just, by happenstance, started practicing flatland all day, every day. And I became obsessed with it. I got the Bob Haro freestyle book, learned all the Bob Haro freestyle moves in the original Bob Haro book. And then Eddie would come over and ride with me and teach me how to, like, Eddie's the one who taught me how to do the boomerang. So there's credit. Again, got to give it to Eddie, because I didn't make up the boomerang.
Did you
made up the boomerang?
Dude,
right?
did you know that were you like, bro, this is Eddie Fiola? I mean, were you like, oh my gosh, I'm learning from this guy? Or was it like, hey, this dude's so cool, he's coming over and helping me out. I met him in Gail's backyard. He seems like
Eddie down the block.
Yeah, was he Eddie down the block or what?
Well, the first time I met Eddie, he was just the guy riding the ramp, and he was amazing. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know people could do that on a bike, right?
Yeah.
He didn't see that. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's blasting airs out of a half pipe in my next door neighbor's yard. I was like, oh, this is incredible. And then I'd go to the grocery store, and my mom's shopping for groceries, and there's a magazine on the stand, and then there's Eddie on the cover. And I'm like, hey, I know that guy. Like, he's teaching me how to ride a bike. Like, then it became a whole different thing. I was like, oh man. And so, we were friends in the beginning, and it wasn't about being starstruck, but then I became starstruck, even though we had already been acquainted, right? And he was teaching me, and I'm like, and I felt very fortunate. So again, I go back to my original thought about, at the intersection of hard work and luck.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me by the time I rode in my first AFA contest, and I got first place in that contest. And I was, you know, I think I rode pretty good. I mean, I was a little dude. I'm still not that big. So, you know, just a little guy on this big bike pulling the stuff that I was pulling. I look back now, I see some videos of it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? There's no way that I would have ever been able to ride that good in that contest if I didn't have a mentor teaching me what to do up until the contest day. And that was Eddie Fiola.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I mean, he was a judge, and he was in the stands. And as I was going through my routine, he was yelling out. He's like, "Okay, do a poser," and then I would do a poser, and then he'd yell. He's like, "Do a boomerang," and then I do a boomerang or whatever. You know, he was like literally yelling at me. Like, he was my mentor up to the contest day. And you know, that's being in the right place at the right time in Orange County, California in the 80s, right? I mean, let's be realistic. I'm not going to pretend like I was some great rider. I had a great situation.
Coach. Yeah.
Well, that, and you said, you know, the intersection of success is hard work and luck, right? So you had the luck right out of the gate, dude. And it's like, if you hadn't done something with it, if you hadn't been so stoked and been like, oh man, this is the best thing ever, and put that hard work in, you would have just been a lucky kid that met Eddie Fiola and Martin Aparijo, and, you know,
tons of kids met them.
Yeah. Thumb through the pages of magazines going, oh man, that guy's awesome. But, you know, that's pretty amazing that you took that hard work and linked it up with that luck where it crossed and made it what you did.
Imagine if Dave Mira like suddenly was like being mentored by Mike Dominguez back in 1983. Right. Think about that. Right. I mean, I get, and not that I'm saying, you know, I'm not by any means aligning myself with Dave Mira, but I mean, just, you know, hypothetically, imagine if Dave Mira's next door neighbor and friend was Mike Dominguez in the early 80s.
He was a young guy too, though. He was a young rider. He wasn't like an older rider when he started. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. He came in and he was all like, you know, he was a younger rider too. I remember like there was something. Okay, first of all, I got to tell you, I love the fact that you have a story about going to the grocery store and looking at like BMX magazines, because that's every single person has that memory of going to the grocery store with their parents and thumbing through BMX Plus, BMX Action, Freestyling, Thrasher, whatever your sport was, man. Everybody went to the grocery store and got their magazines. I love that you have that story too, because it's so humanizing, because you're like, okay, yeah, Eddie, you know, and then you're eventually fast forward, you were Eddie, you were on the cover of a magazine, you know what I mean? And you were the guy that was in the, you know, 101 freestyle tricks, doing boomerangs on those weird cement circle things somewhere down there, you know what I mean? In Venice Beach, you know? So I want to, because there's a specific area or part and chapter in freestyle that I want to get to, because I think it's just going to be fascinating to me. So I want to get to that part, but I want to hear about like the golden years, and that, you know, where, okay, you got sponsored by Skyway, you got the TA, and then they came out with the street beat. I had a street beat because you had a street beat. I had the white one with the purple stripe, and I got it when it was my 14th birthday. I got that frame for Christmas/birthday, because obviously we just talked, my birthday is a couple days before Christmas. I got that, and I got a Craig, you'll love this. I got a Beastie Boys License to Ill cassette tape.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember your first Beastie Boys tape?
Who, me? Yeah, for sure. 1986 or 7, License to Ill, dude.
Yeah.
On cassette. Right.
And so it's where I learned what the word cadden was. I still don't like cadden. I think meant pregnant or something, but so weird left turn there, but that's the way my brain works. So then there was the heyday, right? And so you were full factory Skyway, going to contests, shredding, all the coverage. What was that like for you, being so young, being recognized by every kid in every town USA that you went to?
Man, the transition happened really fast, right? I mean, once I got on Skyway, Skyway did an incredible campaign of just putting me in the magazine right away. And I don't know what their thinking was, to be honest with you. I'm assuming they figured because of my age at the time that that would appeal to an audience and
Sold me a street beat.
yeah, hey, it worked, I guess. That's awesome. But it took a younger audience and the parents of that younger audience to go out and buy, because you didn't need to be 15 or 16 years old to be good at this sport. You could actually be 11 or 12 years old. And I think that was like at that time, and I've said this a couple of times throughout the years, that if I look back at my legacy, it's a stupid thing to say, but my contribution, I guess, at that time was because I was the grommet. I was the young guy. I was the younger of the group, right? And so Skyway did a great job of taking advantage of that. And as long as I was doing okay and competing well and had a decent attitude and wasn't a jerk, they were going to continue to put me in the magazine and do things. And because of that, because of the magazine coverage, that's what got me my agent in Hollywood. And I started doing the TV commercials and the movie work. So everything sort of segued together at the same time. That all happened simultaneously and it all happened at once. The magazines, the TV stuff, it all happened within a 2 or 3 year window. And at the same time, Skyway was like, okay, we're sending you to Europe. And this is during the school year. And I was in 8th grade. Like what parents let their kid go to Europe during the school year in 8th grade with no,
yeah, and you're like, rock out, dude, I'm ready, right?
Supervision or,
8th grade, I'd be like, I'm getting out of school to go ride my bike. Yeah,
I was homeschooled. 9th grade, I was homeschooled so I could go and do shows. True story.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, my parents were awesome, and they went to the school. They met with the principal, and they said, our son is this BMX guy, and his sponsor wants to send him on tour to Europe. He's going to be in Europe for a month, and it was like, I don't know, maybe it was like February or something, but he's going to be getting amazing life experience and going to 4 or 5 different countries in Europe. And the school was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. He's got social studies, he's got math, he's got this, that, and the other. And my school, my junior high school, and I don't know who did this. I wish I knew, because how amazing. Somebody at the school put together a personalized curriculum for me before I left on tour to Europe with Skyway, and basically gave me a stack of books and said, you need to get through all this work. And when you get back, we'll grade your work and see how you did. But you're not going to not go to school. You're just going to do it in Europe. Isn't that amazing? How progressive was that for back then? That was incredible that they did that. That was 85 or 86 when they did that. And so I brought all my school books with me to Europe, and I was on tour during the school year. And I literally would, my Skyway chaperone in Europe, I would do my shows during the day, or I'd do whatever I was doing in Europe. And then at night at the hotel or wherever I was, I literally would have to do my math work and my social studies work and my geography and everything else. So I actually ended up getting a B+, I think, for the school year. And I wasn't even there half the time.
Dude, listen to you talk. Do you realize you were famous? Like, 'cause you're like, like you talked about, like, my legacy, my this, and then you like kind of backed a little bit. You realize like you're Scott Freeman, like you to a whole generation of kids. And I say kids, but like that were our age at the time. Like you were the man that everybody was chasing. Like you had if you think about it, like when they talk about like, okay, Dennis McCoy, Martin, those guys, they all had somebody they were, that they would compete against. You had a target on your back from every kid that was just like like, I couldn't relate to Eddie. I was like, I'm a freestyler like Eddie, but I couldn't relate to Eddie the way I could relate to Scott Freeman. You were my size, you were my age. And I'm like, man, like I said at the intro, if you could do it, then I could do it. And so like, it's so funny to hear you talk, not funny, haha, but like funny, ironic that like, I don't think you realize like how popular you were across the nation. Did that even did it, like when you would pull up to a town, like when I would say like all these kids, I mean, I remember in Lodi, California, we had a great festival in this, and I remember going there, and I was like, man, I want to French this girl that was super hot. And that all derailed when I walked up. Yeah, didn't happen, by the way. Didn't happen. I think I held her hand on a Ferris wheel, and I'm afraid of heights. So, but anyway, sidetrack. I pull up on my bike, and there's the Skyway quarter pipe in front, and I'm like, where's Scott Freeman? And this is how I met I'm like, Drob's like, hey guys. He was just stoked to see, like, okay, we're in a town unannounced. It wasn't like this was like the summer tour. He just is there, and all of a sudden there's kids on freestyle bikes. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. What's up, Drob? Where's Scott? And they're like, oh man, he couldn't be here. You know, it was Scott and Robert Peterson, and then some dude that I think they just knew from like down the road. And they gave him a Skyway t-shirt, and they're like, you're gonna ride ramps, homeboy. And he's like on it. You know what I mean? Like he was some ramp rider that nobody knew.
Might have been Mike Golden, and he ended up blasting like probably 8-foot airs or something.
Yeah, it was so ironic. But like everybody, like if Skyway was coming to town, Scott was like, you were the person they wanted to see. Like, did that like, does that stick? Do you remember that? Or is that just something that you're like, I don't remember being the famous one on the Skyway team?
You know, it all happened so fast that I wasn't sure where my place was, because I'll be honest with you guys, like I loved all the BMX stuff, was fantastic, and but I got a really big rush from going to Hollywood auditions, like for TV commercials and things, and where I would have to compete for the role, because I didn't always get, I had to compete with other actors, child actors and stuff. And if I got the gig, that was equally rewarding to me as like winning an AFA contest when I was 13. Like I'm like, hey, I won. I beat out these other kids for the commercial spot. And then I'd be on the set with all the cameras, and the rush I got from that, to be honest with you guys, like I got a bigger rush from that than I did from the BMX stuff, if that makes sense. Like I almost felt like, especially a few years later, as I got a little bit older, like I felt like that's what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to pursue that lifestyle. And I don't know what it was, because, nobody in Hollywood gave a shit about BMX, right? So they could care less. I had the riding style or a look that they wanted, so I got the gig. BMX was different. There was a lot of attention, but I didn't relish in it. I don't know. I mean,
did you ever feel, Scott, like, because you got in around the beginning of the 80s, and then freestyle, it was as short-lived as it can get. It was like, it seemed like as it got popular and had its moment, it started to deflate, right? And that took a minute or two, but it didn't last very long. Was there did you have a time where you were like, BMX is fulfilling something that I need from what I'm getting from it? But like you said, also there was, Hollywood calling too, and you found as much gratification with acting and beating out other actors and the auditions and whatnot. Did you feel like, man, I could see myself gravitating and leaving BMX as this is deflating? Or, I mean, did you feel like that was going to be your next move to have like more longevity? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a great point, because when you're in the throes of your early career, and I honestly felt like I was having fun, but I knew that I had a job to do. And I hope I felt like I embraced it. I didn't manage it correctly because I was too young and too immature to manage it correctly, but I knew what I was going through. I knew that I had the Skyway logo, and I was employed by this company, and I had a job to do, just like we do now in a regular, corporate gig, right? And there's no difference from that perspective. You have a job to do, wear your logo and do your job, right? And I had that mindset at 14, and I knew that was what I had to do. But I didn't know that it was you never know when it's going to end, right? And it's funny because we've had a lot of years, those of us from that era and even after, have had years to reflect on the transitionary period from the peak of your career of doing BMX and making money and being known to that's gone, and how you transition. And we can talk about that more. But there's a quote, and it was Stacy Peralta said it. And I can't remember what documentary. It might have been Dogtown and Z-Boys. Heck, it might have even been the documentary about Gator Rogowski. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
The Rise and Fall of Gator, which is an incredible documentary. Yes, I think it was from that documentary. Stacy Peralta is quoted. He said, I don't know how these guys do this thing where they have a 4-year window of the rise and fall of their career. And he was talking about pro skateboarders at the time, but he's also talking about BMXers too, right? Because we were in parallel. And he's like, I don't know how these young kids can mentally handle the rise of fame and attention and all the glory of this sport at such a young age, and being too young to handle it. And then immediately as it rises and peaks, within the next 2 to 3 years, it's gone. Something along those lines. Stacy Peralta said it. He said, I don't know how these kids do it, because your whole career is a 4 or 5 year span. And that's true for me, right? That's it. That's all I got. I got 4 years. That's nothing. In the grand scheme of things, that is nothing. And when Stacy Peralta was talking about that, like, how do the pro skateboarders deal with this rise of fame and then this fall? How do they mentally deal with that? And, that is the one thing that I just find fascinating, because I have my own experience. I have my own feelings about it. And some people handle it better than others. A lot of people didn't handle it and either went to prison or sadly killed themselves or went off and, got addicted to drugs, or you name it. There's a number of stories about that tiny little window of time in our lives, yet it was so powerful and so profound. How do you take 4 or 5 years of your life and allow that to control your whole life? You know what I mean?
It's crazy. That's such a great point, Scott, because and not to minimize the fact that you were a younger rider, as these things are starting to cave in or to deflate or to go away for you. But like, when I think about how we were talking about earlier about guys who were like RL's age, Eddie's age, Tony Hawk, guys who are older in the same era, so the same timeline as you, who may or may not have been married, had kids, were feeding their families from the contest wins or from sponsors or advertisements.
Ron Wilkerson.
Wilkerson, absolutely, Wilkerson. So those guys, and here the popularity is waning. And so when that happens to me, I'm thinking also popularity equals dollars, it equals paychecks, and so guys are going, shit, I've got to feed my family, I've got to still pay my mortgage, I've got to keep medical benefits going, or whatever it is. It's like, for you just to sit back and go, man, like, this is crazy, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking too, man, there has to be a dark side, like you were saying. Terrible term, but it's like, things need to change. And a lot of people, when changes come, I would think that they really can't process that. Like, I've been doing this the last 5 years of my life on a professional level. Now what? How am I going to do this?
Craig, I want to pile on to that too, because there's another layer of that. And to me, it's just fascinating. But like, imagine being, let's say I keep saying DMC, because when I think Flatland, I think DMC a lot, like, or Martin, right? Or RL.
Yeah.
Or you go the Ramp Riders, you got like Volker, you got those people. And then, so you see the rise of freestyle, right? And then you start seeing like a lot more skateboard coverage, because behind the scenes, hindsight's 2020. You look back and you're like, those dudes are just trying to get advertising dollars because the bike market is starting to fall. I don't know that as a casual consumer of the magazine. I'm just like, they have their own, like, my voice hadn't even changed yet at that time. You know what I mean? And it was like, they have Thrasher. Why do they have Transworld? Why do I have to look at, you know, skateboarding stuff in my freestyle magazine, but you know, it's starting to decline. And then as a pro, the Wilkersons, the Volkers, all of a sudden you've got Matt Hoffman to just blast onto the scene, like doing airs twice as high as a lot of people are doing in the ramp world. And then you have the RLs, the Martins, and then you've got like, talk about like just middle America coming out of nowhere. You've got someone like Kevin Jones, who's just like, you know, God incarnate, the way that he came in and the way the magazines worshiped him. And if I look at freestyle, those two riders completely changed the sport and the direction of the sport as it was starting to dwindle and kind of wane off. So I mean, I don't know where you're going with your question, Craig, but like,
well, it wasn't so much a question.
It's that, and it's like the dying of the sport, heading into that we're going to call like the dark period, or
exactly.
The dark side.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Scott's leading into something that I'm really fascinated about, because there is the reality of a career perhaps ending, and a lot of things with that career, like I was saying, is like finances and, you know, sponsors going away. Isaac, you were talking about the notoriety, you know, every kid in America, every kid in the, you know, who reads through a magazine knows who you are. And then all of a sudden, if that's gone, now how do you deal with that? Or what do you do to cope? What are your mechanisms to go, I need to like keep going? So that's where I was like, you know, gosh, man, Scott, you're really on something here too.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this.
What happened? Cause I remember like, I remember I injured my knee, and all of a sudden my sponsors didn't call back anymore. Like before I would get called all the time. And then I was like, hey, I hurt my knee and I missed a couple contests, and then I never heard from him again. Like I was never kicked off of MCS. I just never heard from him again. So I was just like, gonna go buy a new bike. What was it like for you? I know, and you have to refresh my memory, dude. It was like either you missed a show, you missed a contest. How did the Skyway partnership come to an end?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've never said this to anybody before.
It's just Craig and I. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah,
I know you guys. I'm sure this is on the internet eventually. No, and it's, you know, it's something over time that I've learned about myself. And it started with how I left Skyway, and it's true to this day at 48 years old and in my professional life now. And here's what I've learned. And it started. This is a true story, by the way. This started with Skyway when I think I was 16, 1988, when I left the team. I was at an AFA contest at the Velodrome, and I was hanging out with all my friends, Brett Hernandez and Mark McKee and all my buddies the night before. We were riding and doing our thing. And the next day there was this high pressure competition. And as you guys know, man, the riders were getting really good. By 1988, the riding was off the charts. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
From 87 to 88, it 1 year changed everything, right? It was incredible.
Scuffing. Yeah, it went from like all of a sudden Scuffing, Mark McKee and Aaron Dole and like all that, just boom. It was.
Oh yeah. I mean, the riding was amazing. And I had started getting more interested in riding vert because it was more fun to me than riding flatland anymore. So I wanted to start learning how to ride vert better and do some things on vert. So I didn't care that much about flatland. I still rode it and I still practiced, but I didn't have a lot of interest in progressing significantly on flatland in 88. I was more into street and trying to learn how to ride vert better. And so I kind of gave up on my AFA flatland title stuff around that time. And when the contest was going on that morning, I literally just slept in. I knew that I had a run at the Velodrome, and I didn't get up in time, but not because I wanted to sleep, because I was mentally done. I was done with competing in flatland.
That was it. I mean, you were just like,
that was it. And and by the way, and the reason I say that is because that was my first experience with how I manage my career now. It's funny, as I've gotten older, if I'm with a company and I work in big corporations these days. When my role has played out and I just feel like I'm done, then I'm just done. I don't stretch it out. I don't wait to get fired or laid off or anything. I just leave.
It's like when you know, you know.
You know when you know, right? And that was my first experience with that. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And that's the ABCs of me. I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I just didn't bother to even show up for my contest run. That was a horrible way to do it. Not that I needed to be professional when I was 16 years old. I mean, I didn't know much about that, but I just didn't bother to show up for my contest run. And Skyway fired me. I got canned right after that. And you know what? I deserved it because I probably should have handled it differently. So I don't blame them, you know? And I really wasn't that upset about it, to be honest with you. I ended up getting on with Dyno with a co-sponsorship deal, and that lasted for maybe 6 or 9 months. And then I ended up just riding for myself out in Atlanta, Georgia with a bunch of great riders. And I had way more fun after that. The pressure to compete in AFA was no longer there. I didn't want to do it. I was done with it. I don't know. Maybe I'd done it too long. I started 84 to 88, 4 years of that 4-year stretch of constantly, like every couple of months, having to compete and practice and be ready. And trust me, man, Skyway, they wanted winners. They wanted people to place well. You know, they expected me to show up and do well, and they wanted me in the top 3. And for a long time I was, but after a while I was like, no, I don't care anymore. And so I just stopped. I just stopped that element of BMX. Cut it off.
Craig, isn't that eerily, like, I've had this conversation with you before where it was like,
I was going to say, we've had this conversation with other guests. I mean,
yeah,
it's out there. It's on one of the shows, and RL, mentioned it during his episode that, there's something about just being done with something, a mental, it's not a block, but I would say it would be a decision. We had it with Pete Augustin. It's just like enough of this, enough of I'm not finding that I'm riding for the soul.
There's no more runway.
Exactly.
You're out of runway.
It runs out. And, it's Isaac, your feelings on it too, from what Scott's saying. It's like, this is like, to me, when I think about it, because I've never been in this position as far as on a bike, right? I'm not a sponsored freestyle legend from back in the day or anything, but you can relate to this on so many levels, because we've all reached a point where it's like, I think I'm just done with this, or this is not my passion anymore. I don't have the heart to do it. And then thinking about what's your next moves? Where's this going to lead me? Is this going to lead me to a path of depression, or, feeling doom and gloom, or can I rise above and then continue on?
Yeah. Okay. So for me personally, and I'm just going to speak to the everyday person, right? I was not on the media level of Scott Freeman. It was like freestyle was fun. Then freestyle was my job. Like I had to do good. I had to place, and there was like this self-imposed pressure that I had to be as good as Scott Freeman. I had to be as good as Craig Grosso. I had to be as good as whoever. And that was self-imposed on myself by me. And then I got hurt. And then I looked at it like, when I wouldn't get called back, I'm looking at it like, what was it for?
But did you feel relief, like Scott was saying? Yeah. What was it for? Like,
I can't tell you the amount of freedom and relief I felt after I did not have to ride. And this isn't a cut on MCS, but having to ride that bike, it got to the point where I hated to ride the bike. To this day, when people are like, dude, check out the Styler, I'm like, I hate that bike. And it's not because it was necessarily a bad bike. It was, but the problem is what it represented to me. It represented not fun. And so when I think back on, I used to flatland, I'm that guy. It's like the older I get, the better I was. When I look back, man, when I rode the Ozone was the bike that I bought with my own money, and it was the bike I wanted to ride. And that was the most fun I'd had. It was like I got freestyle back. And it was hard. You know what I mean? It was definitely hard. And Scott,
That's a rad bike. I love that
is a
bike.
great bike. It was a great bike. This lets me transition though into where I've been dying to go all night. And you can go here with us if you want, or we don't have to go here. But for me, I can only speak to what my personal experience was. And it was, I went from Isaac, who everybody knew in town as the freestyle guy, to just Isaac. I didn't have an identity outside of freestyle. What was it like for you after freestyle was gone? Because I kind of look at it like on a mini level, I know how difficult it was for me. I look at you and it's almost like you were a child star, because even though you clearly, like, you don't know how famous you were to all of us, you were known everywhere. And then all of a sudden freestyle's gone. What was that like mentally for you, where it was just like, I'm Scott, I ride a dyno, I ride a bully, and I live in Atlanta.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What was that like?
Well, so the transition from California to Atlanta happened in 1988. So right as I left Skyway, I was riding for Locomotion Surfwear out of Hawaii.
I remember that.
Yep. And so I was now on a dyno and riding for Locomotion. They were with me all along, even back at Skyway. Locomotion sent me with the Bike Factory, which is a bike shop in Honolulu, in conjunction with Wally Parcells, who owned that. Rest in peace, Wally, great guy. He was a huge BMX and skateboard advocate out of Hawaii, and very close friends with the owner of Locomotion, who was my sponsor for years. So as soon as the whole thing ended with Skyway, and then it was 1988, that summer of 88, I was whisked off to Hawaii to hang out and just promote Locomotion. I spent 3 months, the whole summer, just riding in the Hawaiian Islands with Adam Jung and all those guys, Kevin Lau. I mean, just amazing local riders, cool, totally fun scene. Hanging out at the Bike Factory every day. We had riders that came in, Jun Opada, if I'm saying his name correctly, from Japan, and a bunch of his fellow riders from Japan were in Honolulu that summer. And so they rode with us and hung out. And there was a lot of cool stuff going on. And then all of a sudden, this government agent, I don't even know who it was like, hey, we're going to take a couple of you guys and send you to Tahiti to do some demos in Tahiti. So, and you're going to represent Locomotion in Tahiti. So me and Jordan Arudo, who was a Town and Country Hawaiian rider, really good local Hawaiian rider, me and Jordan got sent to Tahiti. And now we're in Tahiti doing shows.
Crazy.
And so it's like, I didn't care about Skyway. Like, this is my life now. Like, this is better than my Skyway days, because I'm not on tour in the US. I wasn't doing a US tour with Eddie Roman and Craig Campbell. Those guys were on tour in the US. At the same time that they were doing a Skyway tour in the United States, I was in Tahiti.
Have fun in Delaware, fellas.
I was like, hey, oh, thank God, like, this is where I want to be. This is fantastic. And so I had a great time. So I literally spent the whole summer in Hawaii and Tahiti, came home. I'm 16 years old. I'm going to my junior year of high school. I get back to Orange County. My dad says, son, Delta Airlines. My dad used to work for Western Airlines. That'll age me. But my dad was a Western Airlines guy for many, many years. That was a Southern California based airline. Delta Airlines bought them and then transferred my dad's entire business unit to Hartsfield at Atlanta to be with the Delta Airlines corporate headquarters. So overnight, no questions asked, we are no longer Southern Californians. We now live in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was like, what? I have an agent here. Like, I'm doing TV commercials. Like, I'm still like in the scene. I hang out with Martin Aparicio every day.
Dad, did you clear this with my agent? I don't know if I can make
Dude,
it.
I was devastated. And I'm like, I'm a junior. Like, I can't, like, what? We're Atlanta. And so literally no negotiation. We went to Atlanta, Georgia at the beginning of that school year in 88, when I was 16 years old. And I literally had to start from scratch. Like that was where my life completely reset at that point. That was the official, okay, you were 12, you had a 4-year run, almost identical to the timeline that Stacey Peralta said in the documentary. I had a 4-year run and now it's over. And now I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And then that was it, right? So that was when things got hard for me.
Did anyone at school know who you were?
I don't know if anybody at school knew who I was. Not at my high school. There wasn't a BMX scene. There was a skateboard scene because I lived in Peachtree City, Georgia, which is still a BMX scene, by the way. There's a BMX track in Peachtree City that's very famous. And at the time, they had a half pipe, but no bikes allowed, just skateboarders. So I had to sneak. Every time I wanted to ride, I had to sneak onto the half pipe with the skaters. So what I had to do is I had to immediately make friends with the local skaters, the local vert skaters, to let them know that I was legit, or I thought I was legit, and then I could ride the half pipe. Because like I said earlier, right? All I wanted to do was learn how to ride vert better. So I didn't care about practicing flatland at all at that point. I just wanted to ride the half pipe every day.
You were trying to get some street cred.
I wanted some street cred, and the local skaters at my high school were like, "Hey, dude, you're good enough. You know, you're not a great vert rider, but you're good enough. So yeah, we'll let you ride the ramp and practice every day and get better." And so I became friends with the skateboarders, and so I could get on the ramp. The problem with that is the city even the police department in Peachtree City was cracking down and would not let bike riders on the ramp. And so I one day I literally got arrested at the half pipe.
What?
With my bike, my dyno. The police officer put my dyno in the trunk of his car, handcuffed me, put me in the back of the police car because I was riding my bike on the half pipe, and drove me home in our new neighborhood in Georgia, and dropped me off in front of my parents, handcuffed with my bike with the police car in front of all the neighbors. And I got to tell you, that did not go over very well with my mom.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
Dude, you could have dropped a totally legit mixtape right about that time. You would have had so much street cred. Dude, they arrested the BMXer and he went home in a police car. Mixtape in the back of my trunk, homie.
That transition was tough. And, it was, I wasn't, I was away from my agent. I wasn't doing what I love to do. But here's the thing about that time in Atlanta is that I ended up becoming friends with a local Atlanta group called Team Anonymous. And they were part of the Free Flight BMX team out of Marietta, Georgia. So I don't know if you're Isaac, if you're familiar with those guys or not. The Free Flight BMX crew was Paul Harrison, Brian Benson, several other riders that were amazing. And they were the local Atlanta, it's kind of the local Atlanta elite riders. Mark Bell was out of Athens, Georgia. He was an amazing flatlander. And so there was a scene. There was a scene in Atlanta that I became friends with these guys. And by the way, we're still friends to this day. We all went to each other's weddings, like ever since then. Like we are now still this day very good friends. And if it wasn't for them, because we rode street, we rode vert, we rode flatland, we did dirt jumps in Atlanta. I was only there for less than 2 years. I wasn't there very long. And I had more fun, and this is an honest statement. This should have been a very hard time for me. And I suppose in some ways it was the transitionary period. But if it wasn't for those guys in Atlanta, that would have been a much, much harder period in my life, especially as an adolescent, junior year of high school. No longer in the limelight, nothing, no TV, no nothing, just riding. And I think, maybe not, I'd like to think that I became a better rider in that 2-year stretch than I ever was before riding with these guys in Atlanta, because they were all good riders and just doing it for the love of it. No fame,
for the love of it, dude, right there.
No glory. You nailed it. Yeah, none of that, Southern California fame and fortune bullshit. This was just for the pure love, the organic aspect of being a BMX rider, and not a flatlander, not a vert rider, not a dirt rider, all of it. We rode all of it.
And were you still keeping in touch with other or guys from Skyway or other, like, RL or any, I mean, did you have any connection back with those dudes?
Not when I was in Atlanta. I just hung out with my Team Anonymous guys,
Yeah.
the local Marietta crew, and I spent all my time with them, and I had no connection at all.
Not even thumbing through the magazines, huh?
Yeah, I grab a magazine. Look
Yeah,
through
just to see what was going on.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. Do you like, and I'm just thinking back, like I wanted to ask this question earlier, so it's kind of a left turn, but like, how did the magazines work back then? How did you get coverage? Would you call like Oz and be like, hey, I learned a new trick. Can you come shoot it? Or would they call you? How did that stuff work when you would get like a how-to in a magazine or something like that?
Isaac, that's such a good question. I didn't call in. I don't wholly remember. My assumption is they called me or called my parents and said, can Scott be available? They might, you know what? They might have called Skyway, and then Skyway called my parents. That's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Right. I think they probably called Skyway, was like, can Scott be available from noon till 5 on, Thursday? We're going to do a 180 rollback how-to with him for BMX Action Magazine. And then I would just show up, do it, and leave. I really don't remember. I was so just a product at that point of whatever, like they just pulled me and pushed me, and whatever they wanted me to do, I did.
I remember something very similar. Like MCS had me at the Inner Bike in Long Beach, and it was like, I don't know how they talked my mom into letting some stranger from like a bike shop drive me to. My mom was like all in. She's like, yeah, it's fine. But it was the 80s, right? So it was like some dude I didn't know picked me up like in a Honda CRX with a bike rack, drove me to Long Beach. I ended up sleeping in the same hotel room as the team manager because I was the youngest. And so poor Terry Tennant, who was on MCS as a racer, had to babysit me. And I even hit him up on Instagram. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm so sorry that you had to babysit me way back in the day. We were teammates. And he's like, cool, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I think he still holds a grudge, and I'm a grown ass man. You know what I mean? He's still like, man, I hated that.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it was just such a different era that time. Now, do you remember? I'm trying to think of the iconic things people remember. Do you remember filming 101 freestyle tricks?
Oh, yeah.
Remember,
Totally.
like,
yeah.
What was that like?
That was a ton of fun. Yeah. So the first one, you mean the original?
The first one.
Venice Beach, when we were on the tables and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was so I had just got sponsored by Skyway, right? And I just got on Factory Skyway, and they're like, okay, I was 12. They're like, we're filming this big BMX Plus thing. We're going to make a big production out of it. We're going to mass produce it, put it in the magazine, and sell it. And we're actually going to do a little movie premiere, a video premiere kind of thing. And I'll never forget that, because my dad took me to, once everything was over, we went to Hollywood, and we were in some studio, and they premiered the video for the very first time. And everybody was there. Everybody that was in the video was there. Almost all the pro riders were there. Martin, Eddie, everyone was there. And it was like, there was so much excitement and energy, because this is the first like very well produced BMX video about the industry that had ever been done. Right? This is the very first one.
Oh yeah.
Very well done. Hollywood level stuff.
Yeah.
Borderline, as a documentary anyways. And people loved it. They ate it up. And
dude, I loved it.
I have
watched that probably more than any other BMX video in my life.
Yeah.
I think everybody I knew had like at least a second or third generation VHS bootleg copy of that. Like, I remember you talking about the boomerang, like, oh yeah, you ride forward, you lock your brake, you spin, and you go back to the pedals. And I'm like, I feel like there's a lot more to it, but yeah, I guess. I mean, like,
no, that's it.
Yeah, it's that easy. Next.
Yeah. Did you keep anything? I found like when you talking to Buff, like when we talked to Mike Buff, we're like, did you keep anything from the 80s? He's like, I got a cardboard cutout from Zarin, like of that one, like a 09 display that was in stuff. RL has nothing. Eddie Eddie keeps some stuff. He has pictures and stuff like that, but I think he
Yeah.
has an old helmet, but he's like, I didn't keep anything. Do you have anything from like your golden years on Skyway?
So in our first conversation, I showed you guys, I've got my gear.
Can you get it?
My gear from the cover of Freestyle, and my jersey and my pants.
Can
And
we
I
see
also have, they're in the closet. You want me to dig it out? I can dig it out. I
Yeah,
guess.
dude, dig it out. People would dig that.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, if you got time, dude.
Yeah, you know, Isaac, it amazes me while Scott's getting that to think about, like, you know, what I would have held on to everything, but then that's me, you know. It's like
I was a world-class hoarder, dude. I still have my MCS jersey. I have both of my jerseys. So I started out, I have like a factory jersey, and then they started something called like the Magnum Force, and then they gave me a jersey that I had to wear for like some pictures where they were doing co-sponsors. So I have like a co-sponsor jersey, and then I have like the factory
factory
squad,
MCS
whatever.
jersey.
Yeah,
All
and
right,
it's like a small.
I've got a ton of stuff in this box, so I got to be very careful. So I'll pull out a couple things. All right, so this is funny. My dad sent this to me. So he wrote this back in the 80s on here. Freestyle magazine. Freestyling. Bob Osborne had sent, or probably not Bob, probably Andy Jenkins, or one of the guys, maybe Mark Lumen, had packaged this for me and my dad, and sent me. I got to be very careful with this because stuff's delicate. These are all original, right off the press copies of the Freestyle magazine with me and Hugo Gonzalez. So these are, and I don't even want to touch them because my fingerprints are going to get on. But these have never been. These are original. This is right off the press, and I only have 3 left. I thought I had more. Jeez. All right, so I only have 3 left. Oh my gosh. So this is the original, and so there's the cover. A lot of people have seen this cover, right? So it is.
I had that on my wall. I had that on my wall.
So there's the original cover. So this is the jersey that's on the cover. There's the original Skyway jersey that is on my only cover of Freestyle magazine. So that one right there. And then all right, so that's cool. And then these are the pants. These are the Skyway. These are the actual leathers that I'm wearing in the magazine, which is pretty cool. So that's what I have. I've got that. And I've got some other funny, just old things from back in the day. Like my agent had me, I don't know if you can even see this. This is like a picture of me like sitting in the cockpit of an airplane with my Skyway gear on, because my dad was at Delta Airlines. I could, do photo ops inside airplanes.
Yeah. My dad's up there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I don't know why they did that. They thought that was cool, but anyhow, yeah. So some fun stuff, and bunch of old my tour pants, my first pair of dyno leathers when I first went to dyno after Skyway. That was my only pair of dyno stuff, and these are my leathers from the Skyway 87 tour with Matt Hoffman. So I wore these leathers for the entire US tour. So any pictures from the 87 tour with Matt's first tour ever in his entire career, these were the pants from that. That makes any meaning of any kind whatsoever. Yeah, so but that's it. Other than that,
that's it.
Awesome.
Like to Isaac and I, like, it's phenomenal that those things are still in your possession, because Isaac and I, we geek out hard, right, Isaac? I mean,
you guys. Oh, here, check this out. All right, so right here. Oh wait, is that it? Yeah, this is the lady that made the BMX Plus tape that you guys are talking about. Her name's Lori Margulis. If I'm saying that correctly, she's the one that made that BMX Plus 101 Tricks video, the first one.
That's crazy.
I actually have a letter from her dated April 29th, 1986 to my dad. And it says, "Dear Mr. Freeman, I'm sorry it took so long to return this tape. Things got pretty hectic around the office after the BMX Plus release. I guess my dad had sent that tape to try to get me in some like Disney thing. I don't know." And she just basically said, "We're not going to use you or tape or Scott in our production." All right, whatever.
Dude, that's awesome.
My dad sent me back all this stuff that he had kept after all those years, and so I've got a few small artifacts left from
Scott. Scott, I can tell you. So Craig and I now the BMX scene now that we're older is starting to it's starting to blow up big, and we are all riding like 26, 27.5, 29-inch versions of the freestyle bikes that we had as kids. I have a 26-inch Haro Master. I have a 27.5 PK Ripper that I have a POTS mod on with hydraulic brakes. I do tail whips on it. Love it. And it's such a bit, it's starting to really blow up again. I really hope you if you're close to a bike shop and they have BMX stuff, definitely check that out. But I'm going to send you, because Craig and I ironically now have like sponsors ourselves, because we're the old guys that are doing BMX and flatland and freestyle stuff. So cool. KnightBikeCompany sponsors us, and they made beer bottle can openers, bottle openers that are this. I got to put something behind it. Hold on. Grab some piece of paper real quick. So you can kind of see this shape of this. It is a mini tough wheel. And nice. Then you basically just use this to pop the top of a beer bottle. I'm going to send you one of these as a gift from the show. Just as so you can have something that's fun. I keep it on my desk at work, and it's kind of fun because then it's like a signal boost to anybody that walks by that's a BMXer, because they're like, "Is that a tough wheel?" I'm like, "Yes, it is." Yeah, so I like it's just like it's a fun little, like, I'll sit here and just do this on Zoom calls during the day when I'm stressed out. I can just play with my tough wheel. I'm going to send you one of these. Dude.
It's a BMXer's fidget spinner, huh, Isaac?
It basically, yeah, dude. It's a little escape. You're like, man, I can't wait to go ride my bike. But I'm going to send you. I'm going to send you one. But we appreciate you being on the show, and just being so candid and open with what it was like for you, because everyone, fans of the show, myself, Craig also, like, we lived BMX just like you lived BMX, but just in a different spotlight where, you were Scott Freeman, you are Scott Freeman, but we all experienced the same thing. And it's such a cool thing to hear, like the pressures you felt were the same pressures I felt, and the same pressures Craig felt, like trying to be like, where you're trying to be the king of AFA. I was trying to be the king of Century Boulevard.
Dude,
when I grew up,
my hard work had no luck intersection. It was, I'm not saying that Scott is who he is because of, just being lucky. The guy is a phenomenal, talented rider. Mine was a straight, narrow highway of hard work looking for an intersection called luck, dude. 40 some years later, I'm still driving down that road, and
it'll happen, Craig.
Will it, brother?
Driving.
Gail Webb's going to move in next door to you, Craig. Gail Webb's going to move in, and you're going to make it.
I'm just going to go move next door to Gail Webb.
Yeah.
Hopefully she has that ramp on the side yard.
Right.
I don't know if I'm not sure I touched on the hard work component of that, though. The advantage of being able to do Gail Webb shows, because she lived across the street, and ride with Eddie, that speaks for itself. But when Eddie was gone, and listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat this one bit. When Eddie was gone and no one was around, I was riding my ass off all day long, all night long, to the detriment of maybe my grades in school and everything else, because I didn't care about anything other than BMX. I didn't care about anything all day long for years other than riding my bike and practicing and getting ready for the next thing. That's work. So much so, like, going back to where we were talking about earlier in the conversation, by the time I was 16, I was tired of working so hard because it wasn't fun anymore. You could ask RL the same question. It got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore. It was work, because you were just looking to try to, catch up to Mark Eaton. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like it got to that point. It's like, all right, you can't do that.
I'm going to get into something real quick too. We kind of touched on this too when we had that conversation earlier. You guys, we've already had a conversation with Scott just off screen because of my birthday. And the ironic part is, so you were talking about like, okay, I had an AFA contest after you did the stunt thing with Pat, and you're like, yeah, I had to go. It was Tigard, Oregon, which was right there on the very tip of Portland. And I was at that contest. And I remember meeting you at that contest. And I remember like following you around, like we hit it off. We didn't become buds, but it was definitely like the nod, like you'd see like there was a sea of 14-year-old kids. But I remember like we had a good like 45-minute, hour-long session, you and I, outside of the arena. So the arena was inside. The jam circle happened outside because there was no room inside the arena. And so it was, I want to say like, I was from NorCal. So it was like Mark McKee, Aaron Dull, Carl and Chris Roth, you, I want to say Grasso maybe was outside. And we all started doing mini wall rides on those freeway, the freeway dividers. Craig, what are those called, dude? I feel stupid, but
I call them K-rails.
K-rails. Okay. A K-rail, which is like it's like a bank to a wall, but it's only about 4 feet high. But when you're 14, it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And on a 20-inch bike, it's enough to wall ride.
Yeah.
And the jam circle quickly like went away from flatland and into like, this is just going to be us having fun. And we would just ride in a circle. Like, Scott, Craig, McKee, Dull, Carl, not so much. Chris, maybe a little bit. No knock on Carl, but like we would just do these like wall rides. And I remember Ron Wilkerson bunny hopped it was Vander bunny hopped the K-rail. And we all were like, oh shit, dude. Like no one had seen anyone bunny hop that high in a long time. And then I think Wilkerson then went and bunny hopped it. And then no one else did. But just a fun little moment, dude, of like the intersection of like average everyday kid and like the pro. So like, even when it wasn't fun, like you were still on, like you were such a cool dude to hang out with, represented Skyway so well. And you were cool to the average Joe like myself. And on behalf of everyone that ran into you during your rise and then the transition period, you were still always so very, very cool to everybody. So I gotta tell you, I appreciate that. And the inspiration that you gave, like you have no idea how much you inspired so many kids like myself, because I couldn't be RL because RL was a grown ass man, but I could be Scott Freeman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will say it here on the show. I think two people in this world have the best boomerangs in flatland freestyle. Scott Freeman. Look at Craig. Craig, just talk so people can see your face, because Craig's like,
I'm going. Keep going. Keep going, bud.
Scott Freeman and Chris Day are the best boomerangs I think I've ever seen.
Never had. Man, that guy was.
That dude could flail a boomerang for days, and then you could flail like a champ.
Yeah, as a SoCal rider, Chris Day was. Man, he was so fun to hang out with, and he was a great guy too. Chris and I spent a lot of time together, because Chris Day, myself, obviously if RL made it out, because Chris and RL rode together with with General, but Chris Day, myself, Mark McKee, and Brett Hernandez, and Trevor sometimes, we spent a lot of time together back in the day, over there in the spot in Redondo, the spot.
Yeah.
We rode there and hung out, and of course you had the guys from Lakewood, so the Derek Ori would come out, and Jeff Cotter, who those guys were rad. So there was a SoCal scene, and we were all friends. I mean, we all were close, and man, Chris Day was just like the best. He was so.
One of the things I want to ask you, Scott, we're looking on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and we're seeing guys like RL Osborne, Fred Blood. We're seeing Mike Buff, and a lot of these Hall of Fame freestyle OG legend types getting back into the sport, or at least, you know, putting out content, riding. RL is doing such crazy things on bikes right now, and he's even doing it on like big bike BMX, fat tired BMX. It's just mind blowing to see him, you know, still out there. And do you? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but here we are on an episode of Big Bike BMX. So yeah, you're kind of. Do you have any inclination or any desires to get back on a bike with doing the things that you were doing back when you were a kid, or has that train left the station? And like, if it has, are you still involved with bikes at all? Do you prefer like mountain bikes or road bikes or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I ride pretty regularly still.
Nice.
I've never gone through any long hiatus of not riding in one form or another. Those guys that I was talking about earlier in Atlanta, all of us transitioned into mountain bikes in the 1990s. And so we all ended up, not all of us, but a few of us ended up getting the same Cannondale M800 was the model back in the day. And so those guys have always been inspiring to me, even after the heyday of BMX, because as we made the transition to mountain bikes, we used to all get together like in Pasadena, California, and go street riding on our mountain bikes. And that just meant anything and everything was game, right? Whatever our bikes could handle without bending our rims, we were going riding. And we did that throughout the 1990s. And then after that, you know, when we all had relatively good jobs and could get a better bike, then I ended up getting a Santa Cruz, and I got my first Santa Cruz in, I think, 2001, like a high-end full suspension Santa Cruz. And then I've had several since then. And so, you know, I mountain bike here in Seattle because the riding is incredible. And if I can't go hit a trail, then I'll just go street riding on my bike, you know, do things.
You still do endos? Like, do you like?
Yeah, well, that's what.
Yeah, like it's something that I cannot get away from. Like, I don't care what bike I'm on. Like, I'm gonna endo every bike I have. Like, do you still do? Are you like, nah, I can wheelie this, or I'm gonna do an endo?
Totally. It's on my Facebook page. So if you go into my videos on my Facebook page, I've got a bunch of stuff on there of me just screwing around on my Santa Cruz. Like, I'll find an embankment and then do like a 180 rollback or something, or whatever I can find. I'm always screwing around doing the old BMX stuff because, you know, I cannot get on a bike ever. Even my road bike. I have a road bike. It's like skinny little street tires that I go riding with my wife. And it's a road bike. You're not supposed to leave the ground on your road bike. But I'll find, you know, a stump in the sidewalk and launch that thing on my road bike. And my wife's like, quit screwing around. I'm like, I can't help it.
It's in the DNA.
It's totally embedded in my DNA. It doesn't matter. I got my Santa Cruz mountain bike. I've got my Focus street bike. And I always end up backwards and endoing and whatever on all of them.
Every bike. Somebody that's in bike life in Seattle needs to find Scott Freeman and let him ride a Big Ripper or a Haro or a GT, one of your big bikes. Find Scott Freeman, let him ride it, and we need to convert him because I think it'll change his life.
There's a scene here. I've hooked up with a local Seattle crew. This year's been tough because of COVID, right? So there hasn't been as much getting together. But I got a good friend here, Mike Benson, who owned a bike shop here in town called Sprockets. They do rides all the time, and Mike and I've been out riding on occasion. I don't go out with them as much as I should, but they're relentless. Like these are old BMXers, super cool group of people. They ride. They try to ride, I think, almost every Saturday. They go out and ride downtown Seattle, rain or shine. These guys are awesome. They're relentless. They go out, they go street riding, and for a while, Mike would call me. He was like, "Hey, you gonna ride with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know." And I'd go out every once in a while, and then eventually, you know, I didn't go out enough, so he stopped calling. So I need to get back out there and start riding more. But there's a scene here of old BMXers that go out and ride, and they're not just BMX bikes. I mean, like they don't care what bike you ride. You just grab a bike.
No, just go ride your bike.
As long as you
100%.
get on one.
Yeah.
Scott, thanks so much, man, for hanging out. It's so gracious. Thanks for being there for my birthday. That was such a special thing, Craig. Thanks for doing that.
You got it, bud.
you know, just an amazing conversation with you. And man, what a great time. And just walking down, like, such a cool walk down memory lane for me personally, you guys. This is one of those, this is going to be on my highlight reel, because this is just one of those times when I get to really, you know, like, for the last hour and a half, man, I am 12, I am 13 again. And just an amazing time. And I hope you at home watching this, and you in the live chat right now that's chatting when you're watching this, I hope you've gone back and just, there's so much craziness going on in the world right now that, you know, we're a fun escape. And just when times were simple, you could drink out of a stranger's hose and, you know, ride your bike from one city to the next, and never, you know, never think twice about it. You know, call your mom, like, Craig and I laugh about this. Like, you call your mom, like, "Mom, I need you to come pick me up." "Okay, where are you?" "2 cities over." You know, like, your mom's like, "God damn it, Isaac," you know, but it's what it was. But Scott, thanks so much, man, for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks for being part of our interview series and being part of Big Bike BMX. We appreciate it. Thanks for showing us, like, your leathers and that stuff, man. I just wish there was, like, a place I could visit, like a museum where I could just go and just see all that stuff, man. Everything that I grew up with, like the leathers, the helmets, the bikes, the grips, like, just famous, you know, the banner that Volker jumped over at some AFA contest. Like, I want to see that, you know.
Yeah.
I wish we would have kept it, but
I
thanks, man, for being here.
I was at Eddie Phil's house last summer, and he's got his GT that he rode, that he won the King of the Skate Parks on in 1986, hanging on his wall. And I saw that bike, and it was like, it's a bike, and I was starstruck. I'm like, oh my God, I remember that bike. And then I went into Xavier Mendez's bedroom, and I didn't even realize this. I was spending the night at Xavier's house not long before that, and in the bedroom that he had made for me to crash in the room was Mike Dominguez's Torquer from the cover of BMX Action in 1983, where Mike was doing the one hand, one footer.
Yeah.
Remember the blue and white gear?
Heck yeah.
In 1983, that famous one hand, one footer out of Skate City in 1983, arguably one of the best covers ever in BMX magazines. That bike was in the room. And I said, Xavier, I said, is that the bike from the cover? And Xavier's like, yeah, that's the real bike. I'm like, dude, I feel like I'm sitting in the room with Tom Cruise right now. Like, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. I'm like starstruck over a damn BMX bike. That's what it was like. So I totally relate.
Dude, we did the same thing when we interviewed Eddie Fiola, man. I was like, do you have the Mohawk helmet? He's like, it's right there. It's like, it's in a bag, right? But it's still in his garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. RL calls it geeking out. I mean, Isaac and I totally geek out over this stuff. So when you were like, hey, I got those pants, or I got some, you know, stuff I could show you guys, it's over in the closet. And when Isaac goes, can you get it? And that's how we do it. Cause we're like, yeah, it's in the closet. Like the one behind you, grab it, dude. And can't say thank you enough for showing us that stuff. Cause dude, we're geeking out.
Like this is so nerdy, dude. But like, yeah, I'm thinking, like, when you're showing me that, like, the magazine cover or the Untouched magazine, I'm like, you have no idea what our friend Poor Boy Steve would do to have that, where you're like, it's magazines are almost worshipped these days. You know what I mean? Craig's kind of a magazine junkie himself, and it's crazy. I mean, you can go to, what is it, Old School BMX Mags or something? What is it?
Yeah, it's just BMX magazines.
BMXmagazines.com.
Yeah, it's poor boy Steve runs that page too, and it's like, to get a hold of one is insane. That BMX Action, Scott, I have of RL and Mike on the front, and a cherry picker, both of them on it. It's a white cover.
I remember that magazine. Oh my God.
Dude, I took that to RL's house, and I was like, check this out. I mean, even he was like, damn, that's cool. You know,
to have one that's not been, like, you know, X-Acto knifed every page out of it. Yeah. You know, like, did you have magazines on your walls, or were you just like, yeah, it's a picture of me?
No, I didn't. I definitely didn't have any pictures of me. But I had goals, right? So I would put a picture. I clearly remember this. I had a black and white picture of Eddie Fiola on the Vans half pipe. And again, it's probably 1983. And he was doing about a 3-foot air. Nothing special, just a 3-foot air out of the Vans half pipe. And at that time, I could probably get to the coping, right? I could just get to the coping of a ramp, but I couldn't air out. And so I put a date and I was like, March 30th, 1983, goal. And it was Eddie Fiola doing a 3-foot air. And I was like, by March 30th, I'm going to get 3-foot out. And that was what I had on my wall. So not like just, pictures of, I had Blondie on my wall. But other than Blondie, other than Debbie Harry, my pictures of BMX riders were pictures of goals, things I wanted to aspire to. I wanted to get to that point, and I would write a date on it, try to get to there.
I had a Hank and Frank.
I did or not, I can't remember, but
What'd you have, Isaac?
I had a Hank and Frank ad on my. I mean, I literally would put every single page of a magazine. Like if I was especially rich that month, like I had extra $2, then I would buy 2 magazines and I would read one, and then I would just cannibalize the rest of it and just literally just. When I moved, we live in an apartment, man. I remember we moved. It took me a good 1 full day, like 8-hour shift of a job to pull all. I had probably 9 layers of magazine pages on my wall with probably 10,000 staples. And I had to go through and just remove all that stuff. I remember thinking like, this just sucks. Like I had stickers from every contest, every show I'd seen, like I had, dude, probably one of the coolest things I had, dude, was a Boss t-shirt. I gave it to Jacob Santos, but it was a Boss t-shirt signed by Vander. Vander gave it to me. And it was signed by like Drob. Dude, I have a funny Drob story I'll tell you later. But it was signed by like Drob and Vander, just like the NorCal guys. But can you guys tell I don't want this interview to end? I keep asking questions as I'm trying to wrap up. Greg,
hey everybody, we're wrapping up.
Greg, you send us out, dude.
Do part 2.
I know we're gonna have Scott. We're gonna have you back because I want to talk more about like what it was like like after the transition and that man, we keep saying dark side, but like, man, there's something about like getting over BMX. It was so hard for so many people. And
we could have a whole conversation just on that topic by itself.
The psychology of it. Yeah. The psychology of like what it was like. Cause let's get a panel, Craig. This is your homework, Craig. Build a panel.
I got homework now?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
No, I think it's interesting because, and I would love to hear it from like the 80s guys. Here's the thing. I'll talk about it, right? I'll talk about it. I'll be incredibly transparent about how difficult it was. We didn't get into it in this podcast because it's a whole different conversation, right? But there's a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of stuff. It wasn't just about, I sugarcoated it by saying, oh, I was in Atlanta and hung out with Team Anonymous and that got me through it. That's true. But there is absolutely after high school, right? Like, okay, now it's 1990. What the hell am I going to do now? Like, I'm either going to go to college. I'm going to try to continue riding. What do I do? Like that's tough. And so I was 18 and these other guys were 25, 26, 27, 28. I can't even imagine how hard it was for them. So, man, I had the option because of my age to go to college or not, find a career or not. It's kind of harder when you're pushing 30. Imagine being in that same mindset. Like it's a lot easier when you're 18 versus being 28 going, what do I do now?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at earlier too, Scott. It's like those guys are already locked in. They're locked into where they're at because of their commitments to a family or to financial obligations. So point well taken and made.
Yeah.
There's great stories. People went all kinds of different directions, right? And a lot of it's personal. A lot of those guys, a lot of the old pros, they probably won't even bother talking about it. It's like it's either it's painful or it's just putting too much out there because it's, there was too much personal stuff that happened after that. I would love to press, but I'm not a psychiatrist. You know what I mean? Like I don't, but man, I'd love to talk to those guys about that. You know, I'd love to find out who's willing to be open and transparent about that versus who's just going to clam up and not share anything, because there's real stories to be told, I believe. And, you know, a lot of those, not all of them made it through it. You know, you can talk about Neil Ruffle, sadly, who didn't make it. During troubled times, and you know, Dave Vanderspeck, which may have been an accident, so it's hard to say with Dave. But you know, there's you know, the 80s transition into the 90s. There's that crew, and then like we talked about when we had the conversation a few weeks ago, then there's a whole nother mindset of forget about what we did. Now you're talking about multi-millionaire superstars like Dave Mira and others, who the whole thing went to a whole new level, right? And now you're talking about, I don't know what we're talking about at that point. You're talking about a whole different mindset. Like how could you possibly ever forget about what we had to go through? Imagine what Dave went through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't even imagine. And all those guys, I mean, you know, it's just, it's fascinating. It's mind boggling. It's a whole different podcast. I get it. And, you know, I wonder if it would be possible to even get some of those folks to open up about any of that stuff. That would be amazing.
Well, if we can, if Craig can pull it off, if anyone's going to pull it off, Craig will. And would you be willing to come back on and talk about that? Would you be willing to?
Guys? Yeah, we're friends. Anytime, give me a shout.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Let's try and make that happen. I mean, dude, maybe put some feelers out to your friends. We'll hit up a couple people that we know, and I think it's fascinating because even, I mean, it's you have there's two sides of this coin, right? So you have one side of the coin is the people like, let's say an Arlo Osborne. I can use him because he's a good friend of mine. But like you go from making $100,000 a year to at like 25, 26 to like now what? You know what I mean? Like I've never asked him what that was like. And that's, you know, you have to, okay, what am I good at? You know what I mean? I was blessed, you were blessed that we were younger. And so that when that transition came out of freestyle, it was a pretty natural step forward to go, I'm just going to go to college. I don't know what I want to do, exactly. But I was still 19, 18. Yep. And I was able to go to college at that age. And it was still, I can only tell you how mentally tough it was because I felt like I was nothing. I felt like I didn't have an identity outside of my bike, but I was able to transition easier than someone that was 25, 26 when the bottom fell out of BMX.
Right.
So I would love to do that and talk about that. So we'll have you back. That's something I definitely want to talk about and kind of conquer.
Let's do it.
You know, early tackle, you know. Yeah. Craig, any last words? Can you send us out?
Yeah, I can definitely send us out, man. Scott, I first and foremost, I have to say thank you for being on with us tonight, but especially for being so willing to come on and just talk to two geeked out BMX dudes a couple weeks ago to hang out and surprise Isaac on his birthday and to just take it beyond that. I mean, that was a 3-minute conversation. We ended up talking for an hour. So thank you, sir, for being on with us tonight, man. So stoked that you were here. Everybody from Big Bike BMX, all the viewers, everybody who supports the show, thank you so much. We're so stoked to have you here as always. Find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all your streaming platforms for when you're out and about and riding your bike, getting rad, or just hang out with us here on YouTube or on Instagram or Facebook. You can find Isaac and I hanging out, chatting about bikes and other stuff all the time. Thanks again to our sponsors, KnightBikeCompany, Etnies, RideOutSupply, CrushedMX, Broke Boys BMX, PhoenixBikeCo. Thanks for all your support, Isaac. Thank you for showing up tonight too, man. Glad to do another episode with you. I had a good time, brother.
My guy, dude. I couldn't agree more. I wouldn't be on this journey with anybody but you, so I appreciate it. Scott, dude, again, from the bottom of my heart, dude, thank you so much for hanging out with us on behalf of all the old school Flatland freestyle guys, BMX guys that grew up following you and emulating you. What a treat, man. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks, brothers. You guys stay in touch. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
We will. We will. Everybody, thank you so much. If you liked today's interview, make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe button. I always ask at the end, never at the front of the show. But if you had a good time and you want more content like this, definitely hit that bell to get notified when we have new episodes. Craig, did you know we're big in Australia?
We are, mate.
Our podcast,
Man,
dude,
that was
is huge in Australia. I just found this out. We ranked really high. I was like, what up, everybody in Australia? I got to give you a shout out. Thanks for tuning in and making us so popular there.
Shout out to Australia, man. Thanks.
Yeah, we love you. You guys have a good time. Thanks for everyone in the live chat. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Scott, you're welcome to come and hang out in the live chat if you want when this airs. People love to chat with you as well if you can make it. But we will see you very soon. Thanks for hanging out. Go ride your bike. Have fun. If you take anything away from tonight's interview, it's make sure that you're having fun on your bike. Don't get too serious about it. No matter what you're doing, have a good time. Remember why you do it. It's that freedom. It's that fun. Be a kid again, and escape from the craziness of the world. It's your bike's there for you, and your bike loves you. See that kiss? All right, you guys. Until next week, take care. This is Isaac from Big Bike BMX. Ba, ba, da, ba.
Ba, ba, ba.